Hello, Jenna. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Houston, Texas. Very different part of the world. And I have one English parent, one American parent. So I was lucky enough to be exposed to different cultures from a young age. And then I guess just took me traveling across the world. And here I am via Spain, Peru, and Lithuania.
So tell me a little bit, how long have you been living in London for now?
It's been about 8 years total.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a master's here and then went to work in Lithuania, moved to Spain, and then decided to come back. And I've settled semi-permanently Southeast London.
So what did you do your master's in?
Gender Development and Globalization.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the Gender Institute at the LSE, and the first master's program in the country. And now it's a full-blown institute, whereas when I did it was just a department. And it's really interesting because I did gender as an undergrad as well at university in the US. This was it's interesting because gender can be it can be a perspective, but it's also quite niche. So in one sense, this was more of a niche program on using the globalization as a lens on top of the gender lens. So a lot of the people who did the program went to work in international development or feminist organizations, feminist fundraising, and I did a bit of this and a bit of that, but have always used that sort of gender lens to what I do.
Mm-hmm. So then you said you went on working somewhere?
I went to do some research in Lithuania, European Institute of Gender Equality, and we were defining how you determine what gender equality is and what that looks like at the policy level in EU member states. And it's quite powerful being able to say, okay, well, this is how we measure it. So one of the projects I was working on was doing that, the Gender Equality Index. So I learned quite a bit.
Tell us more about this index.
So the index for the EU, it measures gender equality in EU member states. It is one composite indicator of smaller indicators. So things like the gender breakdown of decision making, who's in parliament versus who's on the boards of the largest companies, who's making decision making in the largest institutions of sport, for example. And all of that is just one indicator. Then we'll look at health indicators. Things like life expectancy, but also quality of life, right? And it goes through things like education, there was power decision making, health, violence against women was part of that as well. And of course, all of the the sub-indicators had to be collectible, if that's a word. They had to be available to collect in the different EU member states, so that was quite complicated as well. But overall, gives a good picture of the state of gender equality in the EU, and they update that, I think, every 2 or 3 years now.
Okay, so fast forward, then you decided to go where from there?
So I spent a year in Spain, in the south of Spain, in Cádiz, which is a beautiful part of the world, and I was in a very small town called Vejer de la Frontera, one of the white Andalusian towns, where I have family connections. So I worked there just for a while to see if I could make it sustainable. It was a nice pit stop, but in the end I thought, okay, if I want to make more impact than I'm making, I want to have a bigger network than is even available in that small town, so I jumped across to London.
And did you meet your partner in Spain or here in London?
In Lithuania.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And she's from there?
She's Lithuanian, yes.
Okay, so you've done this pit stop in Spain, you realize, okay, let's go to London instead and live there. And this is after your master's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where does London then take you?
Oh, London, it's just a big black hole of opportunities, expanding and contracting. Professionally, it's a good place to develop a career. I think there's lots of people doing some really interesting and impactful stuff. And it's also London, it's giant, isn't it? There's just so much going on. So I think at first it was a bit dizzying and I didn't really know where to turn. It was difficult to even get that first job despite having, multiple degrees. And I ended up at Mental Health First Aid England, which that kind of kicked off my wellness journey, to be honest. But I was helping organizations to roll out workplace wellness initiatives, mainly around mental health first aid. And I really enjoyed that experience, being able to, because I had always been into yoga and mindfulness previously, but I was able to complement that knowledge with what I learned at Mental Health First Aid England, and really started looking at workplace initiatives for wellness, and from there included diversity as well.
So was it this work with mental health, you came in contact with people who had difficulties at work because of diversity and inclusion issues, or?
It was mainly well-being, things like stress, burnout, anxiety, with that organization, with Mental Health First Aid England. And then I saw a similar role at Business in the Community, working again to support workplace initiatives, and my title was Inclusion and Wellbeing Advisor. And that was really cool because I got to do both the well-being and the diversity and inclusion. And I would do things from, trainings on anti-racism, or helping organizations design a well-being strategy for their population. So it was a varied role, and I really liked it. And it kind of brought together two of my favorite topics, which are inclusion and well-being.
Just walk us through what would a good workplace look like in terms of diversity and inclusion.
If you are an organization who wants to provide a service or an offering or a product, you want to think about who you're serving and being representative of your customers and your community. So, diversity-wise, you want to kind of look like the population around you. So not being, overwhelmingly female or overwhelmingly male or overwhelmingly white, right? And we are working within, a diverse community already, especially in London. So I think getting that representation is important. But then the second part is the inclusion bit, right? Once you get people through the door, you want to make sure that they are happy at work, and B, thriving. And that can't happen if people are excluded, or there's discrimination, or the systems of oppression that we can't work around in the workplace. So there's the part about the representation and the part about the inclusion and how people feel at work. And I think people may label it touchy-feely, it's just a nice feeling to have, but it's actually not. I've spent a lot of time speaking to workplaces about the business benefits and how important it is to have people thriving at work, and that's good for productivity as well.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about those business benefits at work. What would be business benefits of inclusion and greater diversity at work?
So, there are multiple studies from large organizations like McKinsey, for example, and Deloitte, but it's very much the impact of diversity, if those people are included and they feel they can speak, means better decision making. It means more productivity. It means more financial gain. And so there's multiple figures that look at how diverse the boards are versus how diverse the leadership teams are versus how engaged people are at work. So all of those indicators correlate to happier workplace, more productive workplace, a workplace that has more innovation. Right? It's kind of just a win-win situation if you can get it right. And I think most workplaces want to get it right, but they have a hard time figuring out exactly how to do that.
Is this toxic culture developing in the leadership, or is it group dynamics? It must sometimes be a very hard issue to untangle in a workplace.
Yes, 100%. And it's interesting because workplaces will have various role titles to help with that. Diversity and inclusion professionals can do part of that, but also it's up to many people in the organization to think about creating that culture. Leaders, for example, we always say in the world of culture and inclusion, that we set the tone from the top, right? So it's the leaders who will give permission to be vulnerable, or it's the leaders who will demonstrate what good looks like in terms of communication, and not just the leaders at the executive level, but also like team leaders. So I think there's a lot more work to be done around how we can leverage what's there in an organization, and how to help team leaders, for example, make those positive, inclusive cultures, versus what I think a lot of organizations have been doing for a while, which is sort of add on top. Let's do this program, let's do that training. And I think that has its place, but we definitely have not leveraged the power of like that role model within the organization.
Mm-hmm. So Jenna, can you tell me what your consultancy company is called and what it does?
Yes, so we are Ignite Inclusion. It has an evolving set of products and services, but of course we need to respond to the market. So, one of the recent changes in employment legislation was about sexual harassment and organizations needing to put more preventative measures in place. So I, for example, have seen an uptick of people requesting those training sessions because they want to make sure that they're compliant, right? But it's not just the compliance that's why people are doing it. It's because you want your employees to feel safe coming to work. 3/4 of women have experienced sexual harassment, and like 60% of that is in the workplace. We spend a lot of time in the workplace, and we don't live or work in a vacuum. So the idea is that employers are able to, while it's already been illegal for that to happen, it just increases the ramifications if it is taken to an employment tribunal, and it puts the duty on employers to do those preventative measures. So a lot of organizations are, for example, updating their policies on sexual harassment, or rolling out training, rolling out workplace campaigns, so that the culture is safer to talk about things like that.
It's interesting about these barriers, though, that exist and prevent people from speaking up about sexual harassment in the workplace. Is that something you touch upon in your training?
Yes. So in the training, we speak about what is the law and what is sexual harassment, and in fact, that is one of the biggest barriers, is that people aren't exactly sure what sexual harassment is, or what it constitutes. But the other part is about culture, and we speak a lot about stereotypes and microaggressions and those small acts that necessarily you wouldn't take to HR as a grievance, but sort of a jab based on a stereotype. So it's just something that the workplaces have to set a line on. It is okay to joke about some things, but it's not okay to joke about people's identities and the characteristics that especially related to the Equality Act.
And then specifically about sexual harassment, I guess because it's such a violating experience for people, it's sensitive, right? It's probably also something that people will feel a bit vulnerable talking about. And then it's quite a big decision to take it to the HR department, especially if they feel nothing's going to happen, right?
I had a case where there was 2 women involved, and one was comfortable speaking and the other one had not had a good experience with the HR person, so was not comfortable speaking up. So I think there's lots of things an organization can do to make that an easier experience. One is making sure you've got the right people in the role. Another one is having multiple people that you can talk to. So things like, you've got your designated HR partner, but you've also got the director of your team. And sometimes if the director of your team is the perpetrator, you need to have someone else that you can go to. So explicitly naming those people is helpful in making sure that they're the right people to receive those sorts of cases, and that they are able to take it on and know what to do with it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how these 2 things are linked, your diversity and equality work and your yoga practice.
I think everybody has their own unique selling point or USP or own value add, and I had done diversity and inclusion in-house, which was great experience, and I'd been a consultant working for another consultancy, but I think lived experience and perspective and natural skills and background, I think I wanted to be able to bring that out in the products and the services that I offer. So for example, it's incredible that some roles in-house now are diversity, equity, inclusion, and well-being, still very, I'd say, confined to specific things, but even that itself is pretty unique. So I wanted to be able to do that, but not just the corporate world, but adding in the yoga and the spiritual elements. I think I became interested in both yoga and the work around inclusion and belonging and inequality because they're both communities that were accepting and that were inclusive. I think when you're trying to find your place in the world, I was about 20 when I started doing yoga, half a life ago, and also 20 when I studied women's studies, gender studies back then, and it's kind of, you're looking for your place in the world, and those were both communities that were very inclusive, and I really was drawn towards them. So that's how it all started, because of the acceptance of the communities. And so I've evolved, I suppose, both yoga and the equality work over the past 20 years, and they always have been linked because of the inclusion aspect, I suppose.
So would you say yoga is the embodiment of inclusion?
I don't know. Yoga while it's it's so different for everybody, which is the beauty of it, right? It can be a spiritual practice, it can be physical practice, it can be a mental practice, and hopefully it's all of the above. There's a lot of things that we can recover and also learn from cultures in the global south and still are more intuitive and knowing from their body, and I think that's something that we need to get better at here in the West. And it's something that doesn't have to be necessarily, it can easily be incorporated into our day-to-day, and I think yoga is a way of helping people to do that, getting on your mat and being able to learn things like resilience and sitting in discomfort, right? And we're learning that on the mat, but really what you learn on the mat, you take it off the mat, right? So being able to go to work and have a really tough conversation about how systems of oppression are not benefiting your workforce, for example, right? It's deep human exploration, and it's quite philosophical, but we've put people on the moon, we've sequenced the genome, it's not something that we can't do. And those organizations who are led by people who want to have purpose-driven organizations that benefit people and benefit the planet, it's just part of that journey, I think.